What's up, Mosaic? How you guys doing out there today? Make some noise if you're glad to be in the house today. And while you're at it, why not give up a great round of applause for all of our volunteers that are serving in different environments, the worship team, production, AV, people out in the lobby, at the coffee station. Come on, everybody, put your hands together for the volunteers of our church doing such a great job. Now, one of the things that I love doing is connecting with new people. I love making new friends. And so when I step into rooms like this, the first question that I'm asking is, who's not my friend yet, and how can we fix that? I'm the guy you don't want to sit next to on an airplane. I'm gonna make a friend out of you. You're gonna have to clutch those headphones really quickly if I'm sitting next to you. The only reason why I'm standing here today, besides being extremely handsome, is that one of my friends was preaching here a couple of years ago, and he posted a clip of Pastor Jonathan preaching, and I was very interested because I never met him, and I did what normal people do when your interest is piqued on Instagram. I started to stalk his page in the dark. It's normal, right? And I scrolled and I saw this guy, and I was so impressed that I did what normal people usually do after that. I slid into his DMs. And I asked for a lunch appointment and came down here and met him. That was 2 years ago. And voila, your boy's preaching here today. I am also the official president of a club I founded in 2023. It's called the Moina Fans. Because I am a fan of Pastor Jonathan and his beautiful, beautiful wife and kids. Can you give it up for an entire family? What a communicator, what a couple. Steph is even better than him. This is amazing. Amazing, amazing. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to bring my family with me, but I did bring a photo of my girls. This is my wife and my 2 daughters, and I miss them. I am lonely when I am without them. And regardless of where we land spiritually today or what we believe about the Bible, I would believe that many of us have felt a measure of loneliness. If you're an American, in fact, you know that there is a lot of loneliness in our cities, in our churches, in our workplaces. In fact, there's a loneliness epidemic in the US, which means that we have a friendship problem. If the word epidemic sounds too hyperbolic or clinical, I can assure you that it's not a misuse of terminology. Dr. Vivek H. Murthy, the Surgeon General for the United States, tells us that 1 in 2 adults in America experiences loneliness, and noted that loneliness is something that is producing a profound threat in our health, in our holistic well-being. The implications are far-reaching, as Dr. Murthy has concluded that the mortality impact of being socially isolated is very similar to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's a lot, and even greater than that associated with the obesity and physical activity. So why are we such lonely people? We're lonely because of the isolating technology that we have. We have smartphones that are making us dumber. We've got social media that's numbing our emotions, our busyness, our anxiety, our previous hurts and relationships, among things that we can all account for as making us more lonely. But deep down inside, we know that we need friendships. Despite our anxiety about our lack of positive relationships with others, research shows that Americans place a lot of importance on friendship. In fact, 61% of US adults say having close friends is extremely or very important for people to live a fulfilling life, according to a recent Pew Research Center survey. And while we're adults, we figure out that relationships, they're scary because they can be equal parts rewarding and risky. And there are people that come into our lives that develop us, but more often than not, people come into our lives that demolish us. And so what do we do? Because at the end of the day, we all need relationships. And I'll go a little bit further to even say to you that I believe that God has designed this world on a 90-degree angle, that we cannot enjoy the best of God without enjoying the best and the worst of each other. Friendship is that critical to our well-being, and it's holy ground. For those of us that are Christians, we're very aware of the theology of the Trinity. Theologically speaking, the Trinity has always been in perfect community within itself. The Father lavishly loving the Son glorifying and praising the Father, and the Holy Spirit breathing life and affirmation on both. Or as C.S. Lewis poetically wrote, what Christians mean when we say God is love is that he is this living, dynamic activity of love that has been going on in God forever and has created everything else. In Christianity, God is not a static thing. In fact, he's a dynamic, pulsating activity, a life, almost a kind of drama, almost, if you will, not think of me irreverent, a kind of dance. And I don't know about you, but I think every great friendship has to have some dancing in it. A little irreverent dancing too. You know what I'm saying? Let me show you a little picture of me back in the day with my wife at this wedding. Look at me, backing that thing up. She wasn't ready. Young people call that twerking, but I'm a Christian, so that's twership. You want to be the friend with the guy that walks into the party with this face on. This is how you make friends. You walk into a party and you got to get your stank face on. Throw that stank face picture up. Look at that. It look like I smell something. That's what you need, okay, everybody? More proof that Pastor Jonathan and I were destined to be close friends, separated at birth. Let me show you this picture. You know what are we talking about here? Boys for life. God doesn't need us, but God does want us. And because he wants us, he invites us into a friendship, into a community, into love. He wants us to experience deep relationships on this side of eternity. And friendship is a big deal, everybody, especially in our marriages. Marriage is not less of a friendship, but it certainly is more than just friendship. And the Bible talks about this profound mystery. God uses friendship as a metaphor of his relationship to us. And if you get nothing else, I don't want you to miss out on this point. In the midst of a loneliness epidemic, many of us are overlooking an extraordinary resource that God has given us: friendship with our spouse. Now, I know a little something about marriage. I'm gonna be married 26 years this year. It's a little something, 26 years. And we're still married today because I'm extremely handsome. And beside that, my wife and I have stayed friends. We started as friends and we've stayed as friends. And I've had to learn the painful way. I can remember about 24 years ago when I was in a life group. Perhaps Mosaic has some life groups where couples meet together, and we were in this group and the host asked, "Who's your best friend?" And I was up very early in the conversation in the circle, and I piped up and I said the name of my friend that was a guy in front of God and everybody. And can I just tell you, it didn't go well for me. Sex and romance ended right then. It's terrible. I thought of my wife as my soulmate, but I didn't always look at her as my friend. And recent stats show that around half of married couples consider their spouse to be their best friend, with studies showing that couples who view their partner this way experience significantly higher levels of contentment and satisfaction. So when it comes to marriage, maybe you feel like you married your friend, but now they have become your frenemy. And maybe some of us, you used to think your husband was so hot, oh my God, but now you think he's so horrible, you're just over it. Well, let me say something to you. Your spouse may or may not be your best friend, but when it comes to your marriage, God thinks it's the most important friendship that you have. And I'm hoping today that I can impress on you how serious marriage is, how awesome it can be for all of us, and to give you some practical tips from the scriptures that will mold into our lives and integrate into our day-to-day actions. And so let me start off with a profound truth written by a guy named Paul. Paul was a first-century leader that wrote letters to the churches that he founded, letters to help them grow spiritually, and to a group of people in a place called Ephesus. He told them that a man shall leave his father and mother and will be united united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. In marriage, you become one flesh, supernaturally united. And it's this profound truth in mind that lets us understand something about a biblical marriage. It is a commitment lived out through actions of love. It's a spiritual journey that takes two people together to understand and unlock and to chisel out the holiness that's embedded in each person. And we can't unpack all of the aspects of this today. In fact, we'll continue our series, and Pastor Jonathan is one of the best speakers in North America today, and he can unpack so much of this. But I want to say something to you. Marriage is deep. It's a spiritual friendship that's neither fiction or just based on function. A lot of us in this room have thought of marriage as just a function. Let's just be honest. Some of us got married because it provides the kind of sex that God won't send you to hell for. It's illegal sex. And some of us only got married to procreate little mini humans that would wash the dishes and take out the garbage for you and hopefully shovel from time to time. We look at marriage as functional. And some of us, well, we look at marriage as fictional. In a documentary called The Machine That Feels, we learn from this guy named Kondo, who's a Tokyo resident that ends up marrying a hologram of a virtual pop singer. And he bought this hologram from a company called Gatebox for about $1,325. Here's a picture of Kondo at his wedding in front of 39 people with the character that he married. He said, "I love her and I see her as a real woman." Kondo is one of 4,000 men, according to this documentary, that have gotten married with this not nationally recognized marriage certificate from the company called Gatebox. Gatebox equips these little holograms of sorts with basic artificial intelligence. They're able to manage small greetings, say hello, switch the lights on and off. But the company's really honest because they say that they're subject to glitches and the occasional meltdown, which sounds like a real marriage to me. Some people who marry these digital companions or fictional characters are actually called fictosexuals. There are people that fall in love with a fictional character. I also found out that there are people that are called robophiliacs. These are people that fall in love with robots or receive sexual gratification from robots. And maybe you're snickering your nose and wondering why this dude would marry a robot, a hologram. Well, maybe he couldn't resist her. That dad joke hit so different. I was wondering if I should use the one about the chip on the shoulder, but that one worked. Okay, so we're just gonna keep that there. Now, maybe we're judging and we're thinking something about this guy, but maybe all of us in this room today need to pause for a moment, and those of you watching online, and ask yourself the question, are you a fictosexual? Because so many of us fall in love with a fictional character instead of the person that we're married to. We're attracted to fiction. We want to be married to people that never have morning breath. It's fiction. We want to get married to people that operate with empathy with the push of a button. We want a partner that'll clean the house and spotlessly take care of everything and even make meals with the precision of AI. And yet we don't need robotic responses from people. We're sentient creatures, which means that we feel, we empathize, we know exactly how to experience our emotions with other people. Listen, marriage may have some mechanics, but marriage should never become mechanical. So today, I want to break our addiction to making things play out like some fairy tale. We think that we can get everything we want with a couple of keystrokes, a command to Siri, or an Alexa. In fact, over 1 million people in 2017 asked Amazon's Alexa to marry them. Seems like we want things super easy, but what if we focus on marriage as this purposeful friendship with our very real spouses? What if we stop looking at it as function or fiction and realize that God has given us a real person to have a friendship with? We don't marry finished products. And we don't marry people that are consumer goods, robots, or holograms. We get involved with chiseling out the beauty of what's trapped inside each of us. And God allows us to be on this journey to bring out the holiness in another partner. Listen, your spouse may or may not be your best friend, but God thinks your marriage is the most important friendship. So we're about to do a little rapid fire look at this book in the Bible's Old Testament. I like to think of it as Old Testament ancient Twitter. Although you can't call it Twitter anymore because they call it X, which is so whack. But we're looking at the book of Proverbs, and we're gonna do a little bit of a rapid fire thing here. And if you're here today and you're not sure where you land spiritually, if you believe in Jesus or what you believe about God, you're about to get some ancient wisdom that you can integrate into your relationship today. So Proverbs 17 and verse 17 says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. In our add water and stir marriage culture, we seem to dissolve our marriages with one sentence: irreconcilable differences. Seems like it's so easy when things don't mix together that we press the eject button. But real healthy friendships have a culture of loyalty to them. They stay invested for a long period of time. Love is not hormonal. It should be the things that we say when we express our vows, in sickness and in health, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer. And I'd like to add to the axioms of relationships, through thick and thin. Because in marriage, sometimes your body gets thicker and your hair gets thinner. You gotta add that. Let me put it another way for all of us. In this room, each and every one of us wants to be visible in our relationships. We want to be seen. We want people to understand the textures of our soul. We want somebody to hear our voice. We want to be heard. We want our opinions to matter. We want our advice to make sense to the person that we're connected to. And if you're really honest, and if you're like me, you want to feel a relationship that is similar to Velcro. You're attached to somebody else. And when our voices are heard, and when we feel seen, and we're visible, and when we feel like we have a Velcro relationship, that's when we feel like we're valuable. All of us are longing for that in some capacity. So Proverbs 27, 5-6 says, better is open wounds, or better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. So many of us value the short-lived affirmation of friends instead of the truthful wounds from the honesty of a feedback from a person that we love. I know I am a recovering affirmation addict, but sometimes you need somebody that loves you, that's in a friendship that we call marriage, to tell you the truth. So last week was Valentine's Day, and I took my wife, I surprised her. Your boy did so good. I got us some tickets to MJ the Musical on Broadway in New York, and it was incredible. And then I got us to this really bougie restaurant afterwards. Oh, I'm talking bougie. And we went there to eat, and the minute we sat down at the table, my wife takes out her little journal thing and starts telling me about what her therapist told her about me and some of the issues. After the MJ musical, y'all, I'm like, girl, you wanna be starting something, got to be started. And she started to talk to me about how I was afraid to respond to a family member because of some childhood wounds. And she was right. She summoned out the 11-year-old in me that couldn't respond to a situation. I was mad. I was like, I wish you would have told me before we went to the MJ musical. And there's been times where I've had to get honest with her, telling her at one point in our marriage, I felt like we had a child-centered marriage and I was not significant because all she did was pay attention to the kids and not me. In real friendships, we don't harbor, we don't hide, we get honest. And we get vulnerable because that's what friendships do, particularly in marriage. This is why Proverbs 27:9 says, perfume and incense bring joy to the heart, and pleasantness of a friend is like springs from their heartfelt advice. We all want advice. It's a great contribution. Proverbs 18:24 says, one who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. How many of us with a quick hand poll would say that there is somebody in your life at one point or another that has been unreliable? They ask you something or you ask them to do something and they don't show up on the right time. They procrastinate with something. Please do not look to your left or your right. That's rude, okay, if that person is next to you. But sometimes in marriage, we really get the word reliable wrong. We equate reliability to perfection. Reliability is not perfection. Reliability is consistently doing good in your performance or in your quality so that you can actually be trusted. That's what happens in great friendships that we call marriage. It's why Proverbs also tells us whoever would foster love covers over an offense, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. If you've been married for any length of time, then you know that we will hurt each other often and we'll hurt each other inadvertently, unintentionally. And we have to be people that quickly forgive one another so that we can grow relationally and spiritually. Now, to be clear, forgiveness is not getting amnesia. So many of us think that we just need to forgive and forget. Maybe that's the worst thing that you can do. Sometimes God gives us our memory for forgiveness so that we can see how far we've come from our hurt. And so you don't need to get amnesia all the time. Sometimes it's realizing, man, God's done a work for me to forgive that person because it doesn't sting like it used to. Forgiveness is not getting anesthesia. Some people think that it's like Novocaine, that once I forgive somebody, I shouldn't feel it anymore. But the truth is, sometimes we still hurt for a period of time, and forgiveness helps us with that. It's not denying, it's acknowledging that something really bad happened. But it doesn't have to destroy the friendship. It's how we speak to one another. Because if there's anything that I've learned about relationships, the condition of the soul is always at the tip of the tongue. How we feel about each other always comes from the wellspring of our soul. This is why we have to forgive each other. Forgiveness isn't waiting for an apology. You don't have to wait for the repentance of somebody else before you forgive. And I know that it's not a one and done process. Real friends forgive each other over and over and over again. You're like, how many times do I have to do that? Well, forgiveness isn't about keeping score. It's about losing count. And when you've lost count, that's probably the time that you have started your process of healing. Look, your spouse may or may not be your best friend, but I'm here to tell you that God thinks your marriage is your most important friendship, and it takes intentionality. You've got to spend time with each other. You've got to schedule those date nights. You have to continue to have sexual intimacy with your spouse and practicing shared interests as much as you can. But there's something about being here at Mosaic today that just fires me up. I'm looking at this service and I'm seeing so many men that are in this service. Girl, if you're looking for a man, come to Mosaic. Lord have mercy. Men all over the place that love God and are moving in the direction of his spirit. And I've loved watching men gather to do workouts and early morning prayer here at this church. But I need to challenge our men as we come to a close in this message, because men have a unique role in marriage to take leadership and to care for your spouse and to create a culture of friendship that thrives. And I want to tell you that Peter, who was a friend and follower of Jesus that wrote words to Christians that were suffering persecution for their faith, he said some things that I think you need to take heart to. And I love reading Peter's words because Peter was actually married, which means anybody who has in-laws can talk to me, okay? Here's what he says. Some of y'all must have good in-laws. I don't. Pray for your boy. Stretch your hands forward right now. Okay, so too honest. Where did that come from? Not in the notes. Back here. Okay. Wife's not here, that's how you preach when your wife's not here, okay? So, in the same way, you husbands must give honor to your wives because friendships have to have honor in it. I love Pastor Jonathan and love his wife, and I honor and respect them. And I'll never let my honor and respect for them get dwindled down by anything, because relationships, friendships thrive with honor. So treat your wife with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. He says, treat her as you should so your prayers will not be hindered. Again, this is from a married guy. And remember, I told you that life is built on a 90-degree angle. We cannot experience the best of God without experiencing the best and the worst of each other. So we have to treat men, our ladies, with understanding as we live together. That means you have to study your wife. You have to take a look and be a student of your wife. I know my wife has some things that really bother me. She is OCD when it comes to cleaning things all the time. I call her Clean Latifah. Is that all right? But I've realized something in friendships and in marriage. times I could get annoyed, but what I realize is that when I am not clean, that I'm violating one of her values. And most relationships end up in turmoil because we violate each other's values, or we just don't have the expectations met that we didn't communicate. And so instead of looking at your partner as an enemy, ask yourself the question, did I violate a value? And so in this text, we learn that we should listen to our wives because they bring unique wisdom. Shouldn't be chauvinistic in our approach. We need to listen to the counsel of our wives. And it says, grant her honor as the weaker vessel. Weaker here does not mean substandard or inferior. I want to be clear, particularly because I'm a girl dad. But besides that, there's some women I wouldn't fight on my best day. Okay? What this means is that there are some differences between the makeup of men and women, and that we should tend to our wives as friends that are not fragile and weak, but we have honor for them. So think of it this way. Men are like Carhartt, but women are Cartier. Totally different things. One's a luxury item and one's just a work thing. You know what I'm saying? We honor our wives because they're the most beautiful thing that God has given us. We allow them to flourish with our words. Listen to me, no Christian can have a thriving life in God without a prayer life that's regular. It's impossible for you to have a relationship with God without a thriving prayer life. And I need to double down to the men in this audience and read that verse one more time. In the same way, you husbands must give honor to your wives. Treat her with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are, but she's your equal partner, a gift of new life. Here it is, everybody. Treat her as you should so your prayers will not be hindered. God is so into friendship in our marriages and so into friendship in a way for us men that God says, if you don't have a good friendship with her, I'll interrupt my friendship with you. He says, your words, your prayers will be hindered based upon the way that we connect with our spouses. So I'm just gonna be honest with you and say, guys, it is time to step up. And we gotta get passionate about stepping up for our wives. Like I told you, I'm gonna be married 26 years this year. I'm gonna show you a little picture of us when we were really cute. If you think I'm handsome now, let me just show you back in the day. That's me. Looking all swaggy out there, looking like a mini Steve Harvey or something over there. Just, look at Kevin Hart. Okay, so it's me and my wife. I call her Classy. That's the name that we've been using for the last 25 years. Throw the next one up. Look at this one, just cute, just kissing and just all of that beautiful stuff going down. That was in Long Island, New York, right? And it was amazing. And I can remember that day when we were taking all these photos for the wedding, and it was so cool. And eventually the photographer said to me, Wayne, we're gonna have to take these pictures a little bit differently. They're not coming out that great. I'm like, girl, did you see this suit? You see this woman? We're looking amazing. She's like, no, the photos aren't coming out that great. We're gonna have to figure out a little thing. You're not seeing eye to eye with your bride. And I said, of course we see eye to eye. This is why we just did our vows. She's like, no, really, I'm gonna ask you to step up. Here's the photo of the next deal. So, I'm 5'7" and vertically challenged. My wife is 5'10", and there was a little bit of a disparity there, if you can see what's going on. So she asked me to step up. Guys, I'm gonna ask you to do the same thing. You're gonna have to step up in your marriage if you're gonna have a great friendship with your spouse. She did not ask my wife to step down. She actually asked me to step up. And as humiliating as that was, it created the right photo. God wants your marriage to be a perfect portrait of his intention through the scriptures. And if it's gonna be that way, it means that men, we step up. After a loneliness epidemic that's currently in the way, you need to be the friend to your spouse that will experience the richness that God intended for every one of us to have. And you'll learn something about the way that God loves us when we treat our wives as our friends. Because the best friendships have symbols. Not only in action, but in deed. In fact, the symbol of a great friendship is similar to that of a wedding. In Christian belief, baptism is often compared to a wedding ring, serving as a visible symbol of a person's commitment that they've made. Just like when you make a commitment to a person with a ring in marriage, it seems as though baptism can be a beautiful analogy of the same. But let me be clear, like a wedding ring, which doesn't create the marriage, it only represents that a marriage actually happened at some point, that something came about in a person's life. And I want to say that to some of us today that are going to take the next step to be baptized, that this is your opportunity to think deeply about this friendship that God's inviting you into. And you're going to have to give some stuff up and turn away from some things. It is not some trite little thing that you do. It's really about you making a life-changing decision. So for the single people, maybe this will resonate with you too. I noticed that some of y'all got some really good sneakers on here. I decided to go with a different fit because it's my first time here today. I didn't wear my good sneakers because everybody that wears sneakers know if they're pricey and they're nice, you can't get creases in them. No. You gotta make sure it lowers the value of the sneakers on the resale market. Imagine if I wore my good sneakers here today, this morning, I would have been walking out like, good morning, Mosaic. How are you doing today, Pastor Jonathan? I'm just so glad to be here. Trying my best, just walking up steps sideways like this, trying my best not to crease them. Because value is in those sneakers. You'll do anything you can to make sure they don't crease. So this one guy decided that he was gonna marry his best friend in front of all his friends. He was so super excited. He gathered everybody to get, the photo taken, and he was gonna let his best friend know that he loves her more than anything. He went viral. Here's a picture of it. Yeah. Too bad he wore his patent leather Jordans that day. I know it's an old picture, it's granular, but there it is right there. He decided he wasn't gonna get a crease in his sneaker as he was proposing to his alleged best friend. Isn't it so funny that we look at this, but we do this in our marriages and our relationships? We wanna be committed to the person and we'll put a ring on it, but there's something that we value more personally that shows that that thing is more popular or more important than the person. This guy was putting a big ring on her finger, but he loved that sneaker more than he loved her. And maybe for all of us in this room, there is something in your marriage right now that you won't allow to crease. And that's the thing that's actually gonna bring breakthrough. In your relationship spiritually, sometimes we bow down to Jesus and we say, I'm fully surrendered. And Jesus is like, but you won't crease. And if you won't crease for me, how could you be crucified with me? And maybe in your relationship right now, you need to crease in the area of forgiveness. Maybe it's your pride. Maybe it's your short-temperedness. Maybe it's your ego that you need to lay down. And I want to tell you today, if you're thinking about being baptized, the best friendships are when we turn away and give our allegiance to the thing that we love the most. Real friends crease. And so if you're here today and you'd like to be baptized, check the baptism box on your connection card and someone will reach out to you from the team here at Mosaic. The connection card is in the seat back in front of you. If you're sitting in the front row, it's right underneath your seat. And so we're about to get into a time of what we call communion. Back in the days, people used to call it the friendship feast in the first century. It's a beautiful meal because could you have a good friendship without dancing and a meal? Well, we're about to participate in communion. And before we do, I'd ask for everyone to bow their heads all across the room. Everybody, we're just gonna move into this sacred moment. Father, please help us today to integrate these words into our hearts and into our lives. We may or may not consider our spouses to be our best friend, but you consider our marriages to be our most important friendship. Would you help us, God? Breathe upon us with the same breath that called Lazarus from the dead and formed this universe for us to follow your teachings. In Jesus' name, help us to be better friends. Amen.